Welcome back to the Midwest Blerd Podcast, where fandom is joyful, curious, and proudly Midwestern. I'm your host, Marcus, coming to you from the heartland, where the cornfields meet the comic shops and the sci-fi dreams run deep. Let's jump straight into the news. In Marvel news, Marvel has had a steady stream of updates over the past 2 weeks, especially around the future of the MCU and the ongoing conversation about reboots. Marvel is reportedly considering a soft reboot of the MCU after Secret Wars to streamline continuity and refresh legacy characters. Rumored reboot candidates include Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, the X-Men, and even the Fantastic Four. I feel like that's smart. Don't you guys? I mean, I do. People had a lot of problems with the last phase, and they've strung together some really good stuff. We're going to talk about Wonder Man a little bit later, but maybe rebooting some characters might be smart. Marvel's Daredevil, Born Again Season 2 trailer continues to generate strong buzz, with fans praising the darker tone and the return of several familiar faces. In the rumor mill, some fans believe that at least one Fox X-Men actor will appear in an upcoming MCU project. And the most rumored names include Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, James Marsden, and Famke Janssen. On that last one, the X-Men one, I would love to see Patrick Stewart. He's just good in everything. I mean, I loved Picard. I know I have a pro Star Trek bias, but Patrick Stewart, he was the perfect Professor X. I don't know if we've seen a more perfect casting in all of movies. I'll say that boldly, than Patrick Stewart as Professor X. In DC news, it comes to us from IGN, and we got a lot to cover, so let's break it down. In the brave and the bold news, James Gunn has stepped in to defend screenwriter Christina Hodson, who is officially writing The Brave and the Bold, the DCU's first Batman film. Hodgson's past work includes Bumblebee, Birds of Prey, The Flash, and the canceled Batgirl film. Some fans expressed concern because The Flash underperformed at the box office, but Gunn pushed back, saying critics of Hodgson's writing almost certainly never read an actual screenplay by Christina Hodson, and emphasized that she was involved early in DCU planning. In defense of The Flash, director Andy Muschietti has been vocal about the backlash to The Flash. He said many people like to talk about movies they haven't seen, and argued that the film's reception was shaped by online bandwagoning. He acknowledged Ezra Miller's controversies, but said he still loves the movie, rewatched it recently, and loved it again. He also said the film struggled because a lot of people just don't care about the Flash as a character, especially among female audiences, which hurts its four-quadrant appeal. We're talking about Batman here, so I think to give people that are a little anxious about this a little grace, I mean, this is one of the top two, one of the world's most finest. It's Superman and it's Batman, right? We got a great Superman movie, loved it, the kind of movie that makes you want to watch more in this universe, and so now the next big thing to happen is going to be Batman, so any piece of news that comes out about that movie, people are going to overanalyze. And I kind of feel like that's what's happening here. But you can understand it, right? You look at her past. Although also having written extensively for other people in the past myself, you can't tell what was originally written by what was actually executed. It is oftentimes changed. And depending on how many levels it is between you and the person that's actually going to say what's written, it might be changed so much so that it's unrecognizable to you in the end. And yet you have the writing credit. I have experienced that many times in my little life in Indianapolis, Indiana. I've experienced that. I can only imagine what it's like dealing with studios in that system, dealing with executive producers, dealing with editors, dealing with directors, and then you've got to deal with the actor themselves that might want to change things around. So I can imagine that we probably haven't ever actually seen a scene that she wrote. On the positive, it does give me faith that James Gunn is coming out so strongly to defend her. I mean, at this point, can we just have confidence in James Gunn's opinion? Can we have confidence in his taste? Can we have confidence in his judgment? I think he's been a winner so far. I think he's earned a little bit of rope here. And she wrote Bumblebee. And if you saw that movie, that was an incredible character-driven movie, just like Superman was, just like all signs point to Superwoman or Superwoman being. So I am optimistic. Now, as far as Andy Muschietti coming out and defending the Flash, I'm sorry, but to say that it's because people don't care about the Flash as a character, you know nothing about comic book fans. People love the Flash as a character. The Flash is the heart and soul of the Justice League. And yes, it hurt that you kind of had a wild, let's say generously, a unstable person as an actor in that role. It did kind of taint it a little bit, but also the story itself, watching The Flash, I felt like it was a movie that was struggling to be as great as its pieces were. And that is the best way I can describe it. There was so much cool stuff in that movie, but it was almost like it was tied together by the opposite. For me, it came out as a wash. If I rewatch that movie, I'm just rewatching specific parts. I can't just rewatch it end to end. Whereas Superman, I can rewatch that end to end, love it every single time. I'm going to have to disagree with Andy Muschietti. Listen, talented director, all the kudos in the world to you for your career, but that defense of the Flash, I don't know if I can agree with that. Now let's just go through a quick, just to update ourselves on the DCU slate. They are calling this phase Gods and Monsters, which I think fits perfectly into DCU. Supergirl's coming out June 26th, 2026. It's starring Millie Alcock. It's directed by Craig Gillespie. It's based on Tom King's Woman of Tomorrow. And if you haven't read Woman of Tomorrow, I suggest you do. It is an incredible take on the Supergirl character. This version of Kara grew up on a fragment of Krypton, watching everyone around her die. A harsher, more traumatized Supergirl. And I cannot wait. This was on my most anticipated of 2026 list that I kicked off this podcast with. And I cannot wait to come back on here and review this movie, because that will mean I have watched it. And so actually, and that'll also mean I will have survived till June 26th. So I am very much looking forward to this. I know some people are a little iffy because they're taking a risk, but come on. She was hilarious in the little bit we saw her in Superman. Who can argue with Jason Momoa Lobo? Everybody says this because it's true. He was born to play Lobo. I cannot wait to see this movie. Next coming up for the DCU is Clayface on September 11th, 2026. Script by Mike Flanagan, directed by James Watkins, and starring Thomas Rhys Harris. Promised as an R-rated body horror tragedy. Gunn confirmed it's part of the DCU, not Matt Reeves' Batman universe. So this might be the first time we see the DCU Gotham, which could be awesome. Maybe we'll see a Wayne Enterprises truck or something. I cannot wait for this movie. If they can stick the landing on a horror comic book movie, like a real horror comic book movie, it is going to be fantastic. And Clayface is actually, you could really go through Batman's rogues gallery, and all of them kind of deserve a horror movie. I mean, I think we saw that in The Joker. Great character for a horror movie. And I cannot wait to see this. I cannot wait to see what they do with it. I cannot wait to see this universe's interpretation of kind of that Gotham world, like the darker side of this universe, because we saw kind of the bright, shiny side in Superman. We saw the reading a comic book in Superman. So let's see what this horror is going to be like. Cannot wait. If I was going to say in the next 5 years, my most anticipated movie, this would be in the top 2, definitely, probably my number 1, Man of Tomorrow, on July 9th, 10 days before my birthday, 2027. Written and directed by James Gunn, expected to feature David Corenswet's Superman, Nicholas Holt's Lex Luthor, and possibly Supergirl. Now, there are a lot of rumors about who the villain could be. Some are Brainiac, Zod, which, I mean, it's been done. But we could do it again. Or Doomsday, also been done. We could do it again. I mean, Brainiac was done. I think Brainiac on Smallville was incredible. And so, you know, we'll see who the villain ends up being first. We'll talk about that to death. And then we'll see the movie. We'll give our judgment on what we think about it. Next, October 1st. And as we get later, these dates, of course, they change these dates all the time. But The Batman Part 2, October 1st, 2027, directed by Matt Reeves, starring Robert Pattinson. Filming begins spring 2026, so soon. And part of what they are calling the Batman Epic Crime Saga, which isn't part of the DCU. It's this Matt Reeves universe. And I got to tell you, I'm really looking forward to this. First of all, so when I heard Cedric Diggory was being cast, when I heard Sparkly Vampire was being cast as Batman, I think like a lot of people was like, what are they doing? But then I had to remind myself, moonlighting was Die Hard, was John McClane, and that movie is probably the closest we'll ever come to a perfect movie. Ever. Ever. And if this podcast makes it to a Christmas special, we will talk about that at length. But a lot of arguments about who the greatest Batman has been in live action, but you cannot have that conversation without Michael Keaton. You can't. What was he before that, Mr. Mom? So I pulled myself back and I said, let's see the movie. And when I did, oh my goodness. It was incredible. That movie is my favorite Batman movie. That's not to say that he's my favorite Batman. But that is my favorite Batman movie. The story, the execution, the visuals, just beautiful. I mean, the way they built that universe, incredible. Incredible. So I am definitely looking forward to seeing what director Matt Reeves is going to give us again. Next up in DC news, the Brave and the Bold timeline. Gunn says fans shouldn't expect major updates until after the Batman Part 2 releases. He also committed to never releasing 2 Batman movies in the same year. So we know it's not coming in 2027. I mean, we kind of could have guessed that. But he also teased something related to Martian Manhunter, who many are speculating might appear in Man of Tomorrow, and I hope so. Martian Manhunter is one of my favorite characters. One of my favorite characters in all of DCU, especially on the hero side. Like, just a great person. It's a DC animation Justice League movie. It's a period piece. It takes place. I am sorry, y'all. I'm spacing on the name of it, but watch that version of Martian Manhunter. Oh, so good. Martian Manhunter is such a great character with so much potential. Pretty much every version of Martian. Give me the Smallville version of Martian Manhunter. I'll take it. Martian Manhunter is a great character. So whether it's Man of Tomorrow, whatever it is, whether we get a teaser in even in Supergirl, whatever, I'm here for it. In Star Wars news, we have 2 major updates. One brought to us from USA Today and another from Variety. Daisy Ridley addressed Kathleen Kennedy's departure and whether it affects her future in Star Wars. She said, it won't affect me going forward if it were to be true. She added, I think what's lovely is people are excited because they want to see the films, which is great. Ridley laughed about how she can't talk about future projects even while promoting films that are literally made. She said, everything is so accessible now. It's really wonderful to be part of something where people maybe don't know as much. And I love that people want to know. But it will also be a great surprise when the thing is done. On whether news might break in 2026, she said, I don't know about 2026. In the future sometime, Kennedy is, as we know, we talked about last episode, is transitioning back to producing, with Dave Filoni becoming Lucasfilm president and Lewin Brennan serving as co-president. I gotta tell ya, first of all, Rey, Daisy Ridley's character, is one of my favorite Star Wars characters. So let me start there. I love Rey. I love her Jedi journey. I love that it's unique. I love what her journey taught us about the Force. I might not have been the biggest fan of The Last Jedi, but I got to tell you, the parts with her and Luke, I loved. From the perspective of her, I loved that. I loved it all. And in fact, I've got ancient Jedi texts from those books. That's how much I loved it. So I am excited. I'm excited every time she talks about it. I'm excited to hear her talk about it. I'm excited that she's still excited to be a part of Star Wars. You always hear these people come out and be like, me, I don't like this because of this or because of that or because of whatever. I like people that love the fact that they're a part of Star Wars. I'll end it there. I love people that love the opportunity they've been given through Star Wars. And I think more people should be thankful for that. So this next one comes to us from Variety. Rian Johnson, having just talked about The Last Jedi, commented on Kennedy's exit and the future of Star Wars leadership. He said, "I love Kathy. I am excited now to see what she does next." He added, "As a Star Wars fan, the most exciting thing for me is always seeing when they bring in fresh voices and fresh filmmakers to come in and tell new stories in that world." On whether he'd return to direct, he said, "I had the time of my life doing it. I would feel blessed if that were to ever happen again." I got to tell you, even if you aren't a fan of The Last Jedi, which I'm not, you have to be a fan of Rian Johnson. I mean, you do. You have to be a fan of every time he's interviewed, what comes out of his mouth about working with Star Wars again. It's what you want to hear because, listen, even if I know that there was a negative fan backlash to that movie, it kind of split the community a little bit. I've been in plenty of conversations about it, and I love all of those conversations, right? Because we're Star Wars fans talking about more Star Wars. But some of that had to affect him, had to hurt him. But I love that he has chosen, instead of focusing on the negative, to instead focus on the fact that he got to direct something in Star Wars, which is awesome. I don't care if it was the Christmas special. It was awesome because it's Star Wars. So I am bravo to you, Rian Johnson. Now in Star Trek news, Star Trek has had a lively 2-week stretch. Now later, we're going to talk about Starfleet Academy, episodes 3 and 4, and just why I love that show so much. But first, we're going to start with this. Star Trek has had a lively 2-week stretch. Chris Pine said he is completely clueless about the new Star Trek film being developed by the Dungeons and Dragons directors of another film he was in, but wished them luck, saying, "Have fun, good luck, live long and prosper." Which, good on you, Chris Pine. That is awesome. Paramount continues to signal that the franchise is still a priority. It better be a priority. It better be a priority, even as the film slate evolves. Production on Strange New Worlds continues, with cast members teasing the most ambitious episodes yet. In the wizarding world, let's talk about casting news. HBO's CEO reaffirmed that the Harry Potter reboot series is targeting an early 2027 release window. The confirmed cast so far: Toby Wolfe playing Harry Potter. He's known for The Last Post and Rare Beasts, neither of which I've seen, but he is often praised for emotional subtlety and grounded performances. Bronte Carmichael, Hermione Granger, known for Christopher Robin, Andor, and Game of Thrones. Strong dramatic presence and emotional intelligence. I think you need that for Hermione. Joshua Pickering, Ron Weasley. First of all, he has the perfect name to play a Weasley, Joshua Pickering. Ron Weasley. He appeared in Peter Pan and Wendy. He's known for warmth, humor, and natural charm. I don't think you could describe a Weasley any better than that. And Matthew Baton, I think I'm mispronouncing that, but playing Hagrid, beloved for ghosts and horrible histories. He's a comedic actor with surprising dramatic depth, which is a perfect, I know I keep saying this, description of Hagrid. Leslie Manville as McGonagall, an Oscar-nominated actress known for Phantom Thread, Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris, and Maleficent. And the rumored cast, Cillian Murphy as Voldemort, an Oscar winner for Oppenheimer, of course, known for Peaky Blinders, Inception, and A Quiet Place Part 2, would be amazing casting for Voldemort. Ben Barnes as Sirius Black, known for Shadow and Bone, The Punisher, Prince Caspian. Papa Esidu for Severus Snape, known for I May Destroy You, Gangs of London, The Lazarus Project. Now it's time for reviews and reactions. First, we're going to start with what has been my favorite show so far of 2026. Now, I know not a lot. We're still in January, so not a lot has happened, but oh my goodness, honestly, if this had come out in 2025, it would be in the running for my favorite show of 2025 as well. Starfleet Academy. Let's get into episodes 3 and 4. Quick synopsis. Let's start with episode 3, titled Vetus Reflux. Prank war between Starfleet Academy cadets and the War College spirals into a full-scale rivalry. The cadets devise a clever plan involving the Vetus reflux fungus, a bioluminescent organism that reacts dramatically to sound. The episode escalates into a strategic chess match of pranks, culminating in a nighttime infiltration sequence that feels like Ocean 11 meets Lower Decks. Okay, before I tell you how I felt about this episode, I want to read to you two incredible scenes, dialogue from two incredible scenes. First, a little backstory. The entire episode is this competition between the Starfleet cadets and the War College. And the competition is actually a prank war, and the War College's leader helped his students with their prank, which Chancellor Mala calls cheating. She doesn't cheat, but what she does instead is, through a series of lessons and punishments, teaches her cadets how to use creativity to get revenge. And the prank they do, which I'll get into later, is perfect. Starfleet. And the War College's reaction and eventual defeat and capitulation shows something fundamental to the idea of Starfleet, to that optimistic future that makes Star Trek Star Trek. Peace and diplomacy are more powerful than war, and real strength is in not having to fight in order to win. Okay, so I know I didn't have to go through all of that, since you've probably already watched the episode if you're watching a review, but now you know where my heart is and when I talk about these two scenes, which are two of my favorite scenes in all of Star Trek. Yes, I said that. The first is after the Starfleet cadets win the prank war. Okay, so in the end, when the plant springs out of the rooms and you see people thrown up against walls and you just see it coming out, my favorite part of that scene is there's one War College student who looks just amazed by it. Like he wishes he was in the academy. Like the look on his face is the look you see when you watch Star Trek. It's the look that Boimler has on his face when he sees something new, right? Just amazement. It is that explorer look on his face, rather than what we've seen mostly out of War College students, which is that kind of militant, let's get in a fight look. His face, you saw one War College student's face with just that wonder on it. And I would imagine that by the end of this show, that's what we're going to see. We're going to see the War College evolve just and mesh into Starfleet Academy, just be absorbed by Starfleet Academy, because, and we'll talk about this later, that's what the future of Starfleet has to be. So, anyway, Caleb's in the Chancellor's office, and he's piecing together how the Chancellor taught them exactly what they needed to know to get revenge. Which is a funny scene because she kind of, like, they originally talk about how there was this old Starfleet Academy prank like hundreds of years ago where the upperclassmen transported all the first years to the roof. And then in this scene, it comes to Caleb that, oh my God, you were one of those students that transported the first years. She's like laughing like, yes, didn't you call it legendary? Great scene, great chemistry. But, and there's also a funny part where as he's piecing it all together, he's like, why does everything here have to be a test? And she just deadpan just goes, because it's school, Caleb, which was funny to me. Anyway, so then she starts to say something profound and undeniably Star Trek. She says, the War College teaches its cadets to fight battles. I'm teaching you to end wars, to learn the patience to formulate a true strategy and the empathy to understand your opponents so you can disarm them. That's what Starfleet needs to be again. And leading through fear alone makes that impossible. Wow. If you can hear that and still say this show doesn't feel like Star Trek, then I can confidently say you have no idea what you were talking about. I'm sorry. Yes, art is subjective, but we know enough about this story to know what fits into the overall story being told and what doesn't. And if you think about Star Trek like I do as one story, then this definitely fits well into that story and into Gene Roddenberry's idea of an optimistic future. I would say much more than even season 1 of The Next Generation, and I challenge you to prove me wrong. When she said that's what Starfleet needs to be again, also tells us something very key about this time in the Federation's history. First of all, let's just be honest. There are many different times in the Federation history. It is not one, everything's the same all the time, right? You go from Enterprise to the original series to, or actually, let's just go through timeline. You go from Enterprise to Strange New Worlds to the original series to The Next Generation to Deep Space Nine, Voyager happening at the same time, then Lower Decks to where we are today. Throw Discovery into both ends of that. There have been different times in Starfleet history, which would make sense if you were telling one story that takes place over hundreds of years, right? So there are many different points in history, and we need to learn about those points in history. The Federation in The Next Generation is different than the Federation was in the original series, and those differences matter, and it makes the story even richer. And what she's telling us here, and what we've been learning from this show, is that when the burn happened, everyone became insular. Everyone started having to protect themselves. And when we talk about episode 4, we're going to focus on what happened to the Klingons after the burn. But what we learn about the Federation is that it was under siege. We learned that in the last seasons of Discovery. The Federation was under siege when the burn happened. It lost a sense of itself. The Federation, from the jump, from these are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. On its 5-year mission, we learn from the jump that they are explorers. They are there to what? Explore strange new worlds. They are there to meet new civilizations. That's what it's there for. So when we hear her say that's what Starfleet needs to be again, what we're hearing her say is that we need to be explorers again because we haven't been, but now we can be again. And maybe there was a great reason why we haven't been, but now that things have changed, we need to change with those things. And that is what, to me, so far, this show has been about. It's been about showing us Starfleet finding itself again, tying itself to its past, to its founding, to its reason for being, which is diplomacy, which is unity, which is 1,000 civilizations, 1,000 points of view. I forget how the phrase exactly goes, but infinite diversity and infinite whatever, right? That's what they are. And they haven't been able to be that, but they get to be that again. And I think that through these cadets, we are going to see Starfleet finding itself. And episode 4 just continues on that. Okay, that was the first scene. Her explaining Starfleet perfectly. Ending wars. Learning about your opponents enough to defeat them without having to conquer them. Second scene takes place afterward. And it's a piece of backstory just to set this up. The main character of the show, Caleb, is participating in a heist that we talked about earlier. He gets stopped by his love interest, and she uses her Beta Z powers to feel that he is actually loving being a part of a group. Now, when we get introduced to him, right, he's the consummate loner, lone wolf, but we're seeing these walls start to break down, and she just says it. She puts her hand on him. I can tell exactly what's happening in your mind. You're being a part of the group for the first time in your life, and you like it. You love it. And it scares you. Classic loner story. I love it, and that's what makes it a classic, because it works, right? And this is after the Iconian character, Darum, gets humbled by losing the Calicut captaincy. The episode is building a theme of what it takes to be part of a community. Openness and humility. And they are getting their Calicut team jackets, and Darren, who, this is important, it was established earlier in the series that his parents are hard asses, which is why he's a jerk. Honestly, he doesn't know how to be anything else. We all know tons of people like this, right? And his parents aren't loving, and his culture seems to not prize empathy or compassion. They seem to have no real community. It's just kind of survival of the fittest. Now, you could kind of say that about Klingons, but Klingons have incredible closeness with each other. Their community, actually, among Klingons, praising each other is very important. But what we see from Iconians is no, you are either best or you're nothing. And so he, after being humbled, not only being humbled, but accepting being humbled, he writes a letter to his parents, and the scene is beautiful. You see them all getting their jackets. And during this is him giving this voiceover, and he sees the captain jacket and how it's not his. And then he ends up giving the captain jacket to the captain while this voiceover is happening. So let me read this to you. Dear Mother and Father, Academy training remains rigorous as expected. What I hadn't anticipated and coming to appreciate are the lessons in leadership that I could have never received anywhere else. It's fascinating, really, to be part of a community where excellence is prized and rewarded, but not to the detriment of its individual members. One can lead and be led with empathy, patience, and not just for others, but for oneself as well. Perhaps this is what friendship and family are meant to be. Perhaps this is who I am meant to be. I suspect as we go through this season, you're going to hear me say this a lot, but this show is 100% Star Trek. I've watched that scene probably a dozen times. I cried my eyes out the first time. And it ends with the Star Trek theme music. Oh man, they know what they're doing. They hit all my member berries. It is so good. Not only the idea that it takes empathy and patience. Think about the best Star Trek captains. Picard, Janeway, Kirk, in my opinion, those are the three best. They all were grounded in empathy and patience. That's what made them incredible leaders. Not just intelligence, as they weren't even the smartest people on any of their crews. They weren't the strongest people on any of their crews, not even the oldest and most experienced people on any of their crews. It was their empathy and their patience, their ability to have, as the Chancellor put it, the patience to formulate a true strategy and the empathy to understand your opponents so you can disarm them. Woo-hoo. I've seen a lot of rage baiters on the internet say that the writing is weak in New Trek, but I would strongly beg to differ. This show's writing is some of the best we've had in Star Trek. Now on to episode 4, titled Vox in Excelso, which means voice in the heights or voice on high. It's used in Christianity to describe an angelic or heavenly voice. Now this episode dives deep into Jaden Craig's backstory, the Klingon cadet. We learn about his fractured relationship with his Klingon heritage and his struggle to reconcile honor with Federation ideals. A political crisis erupts when Klingon refugees arrive in Federation territory, not necessarily seeking Federation help, but needing it, and too proud to accept it. Particularly, the Federation found a planet almost identical in topography and climate to Chromos. They offer it to the Klingons, and the Klingons reject it. And their leader, in a conversation with Chancellor Nala, reminds her that Klingons are a culture built on conquest. They also have an interesting love story, which, having just watched a documentary on Star Trek Voyager, where they talked about how they couldn't have Janeway have a romantic relationship because she was a captain, even though every male captain always had romance as a part of their character development. I'm glad we've dropped that double standard because it's unnecessary. Everyone can accept that a powerful woman has a love life. It won't ruin our childhoods, or shouldn't, at least. The episode culminates in a mock battle, a symbolic ritual that allows the Klingons to maintain honor without bloodshed. It's emotional, character-driven, and one of the strongest episodes so far. I challenge your Star Trek fandom if you didn't get chills in that end fight. Well, in quotes, fight. Scene with the Klingon, when that classic Klingon theme from the original Star Trek movies came on. And when I saw future birds of prey come out of warp, oh my goodness, my heart went to red alert. This episode perfectly built on the themes and lessons of the prior episode. So let me set up the story. The Klingons are near extinction, but they're a proud people. You keep getting flashbacks from Jaden's history that show you, frankly, the sad state of Klingons. Their home planet, Kronos, has been destroyed. There's a jab at one point where Darren repeats a conspiracy theory that the Klingons blew up their own home world, which, honestly, could be true. I mean, maybe we'll find out, but I know I sure want to know. But I mean, if Klingons no longer had an external enemy to fight because they could no longer use warp travel, what would a warrior culture with a history of civil wars do? Probably go to war with each other and nearly wipe themselves out, which is what it seems has happened. But now we see them having hit rock bottom. So it appears like they've been reunified by an actual, a white Klingon. First, hallelujah, we finally have a racial diversity among Klingons. Now, Discovery set the stage by showing us what appeared to be albino Klingons, but I'm glad that modern Star Trek hasn't stuck to the hokey racialism. Honestly, as a purist, you'd have to acknowledge that the first Klingons were totally Caucasian. But then, for some reason, in the next generation, they suddenly all became either black people or black-faced actors. They must have hid all of the white Klingons in the same place Romulans hid the Remans. But we finally get a Caucasian Klingon. So thank you for that. And the Federation uses empathy to do what Jaden challenges them to do. So earlier, the episode is also kind of structured around this debate, and they give a throwback to Justice Sati who's first mentioned in The Next Generation in the episode entitled Drumhead, which is one of my favorite episodes of my favorite Star Trek series. I mean, when the Doctor quotes, "When the first chain is broken," oh my goodness. When the first speech is censored. Oh, that callback warmed my member berries, definitely. But I digress. So this debate is going on, and they have Caleb, who turns out is a master debater. And he says, "I'm a master debater," which is a funny joke. But he turns out to be one of the smartest people by far in his class, which we kind of get hints of because he can program everything and he escapes everywhere. But his memory, I mean, the dude's a genius. Actually, he kind of reminds me of Kirk, right? Kind of like that genius that's kind of like a rebel too at the same time. So actually, definitely Kirk from the Kelvin universe. He kind of has that bad boy mariner, I said before, thing to him. But anyway, he has this argument. So in one point, they're arguing, should the Klingons accept help from the Federation? And Jaden says very forcefully, and this is after they make him out to be a person that has trouble public speaking, but he says very forcefully that the Federation need to listen to what the Klingons are saying. And so the Federation finally does. And it's what leads to them staging kind of this show battle so that the Klingons could save face. It showed that patience to devise a true strategy and the empathy to disarm your opponents. In this instance, by actually using arms and having the empathy to know how to use those arms and what the Klingons want. Listen, it was a risk. The Klingons could have actually fought them. But Starfleet Captain Nala Ake knew they wouldn't. She was an empathetic leader. Honestly, in this episode, I felt like she was 100% Picard. It was a Picard-like strategy with a Picard-like understanding of Klingon culture. But man, when the Starfleet ships started warping in and calling out their call signs, I mean, I don't have all of them listed, but it was just like, whoa, USS whatever, boom, USS blah, 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 reporting in, boom, USS whatever. And then the op station reported that the Klingons are arriving, and you heard that music from the original Star Trek movies. You know what I'm talking about. It gave me chills. I loved it. And then when the Klingons were like, we claim this planet as spoils of war. And then they came together for the Federation to officially surrender the planet. But like they all knew what was happening. And the look on the Klingon leader's face saying, you finally heard us. You finally understood. You finally saw us. And respected who we were, who we are. Just incredible. And I just cannot wait to see future stories with the Klingons and the Federation. Honestly, it kind of gives you that, like after the original series, when the Federation and the Klingon are becoming allies, it gives you feelings of that period of time again. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing, and I'll keep saying it as a broken record, we're seeing the Federation establish itself again. In first episode, we see Starfleet Academy trying to come together again. Perfect decision to bring in a chancellor that's centuries old that actually went to the original Starfleet Academy. Perfect, because then it gives us that story connection to the past, right? Then In this episode, we saw Beta Z re-enter the Federation. The Federation is starting to find itself again. What did they have to do in order to get Beta Z together? Was it by conquest? No. The Federation wasn't founded by conquest. It was by empathy. The Federation is not Islam. It's not founded by conquest. It was through empathy, through patience. They heard the Betazoids. They heard their fears. They had empathy. That's why the Federation capital is now on Beta Z, which, I mean, we need to get some scenes on Beta Z, because if it looks anything like the Beta Z that is both shown and described in the Next Generation, we need to be there. We need to be their stat. So, just again, I cannot praise this show enough. I am loving it. It is warming the cockles of my Star Trek heart. I am loving it. Okay, next up in reviews, Marvel's Wonder Man. Now, this is a show I very much enjoyed. Marvel's Wonder Man follows Simon Williams, a Hollywood stuntman and actor who becomes infused with ionic energy, gaining superhuman strength, durability, and immortality. The series explores fame, identity, redemption, and the blurred lines between heroism and performance. Characters created by Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Don Heck, Wonder Man first appeared in Avengers number 9 in 1964. The series is developed by Destin Daniel Cretton and written by Andrew Guest. The cast includes Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who plays Wonder Man. He's known for Watchmen, Aquaman, Candyman, and The Trial of the Chicago 7. Ben Kingsley, I mean, we all know who he is. He plays Trevor Slattery. He's known for Gandhi, Sexy Beast, Shutter Island, Hugo, what else? Ender's Game. I mean, just known in everything that he's in for being amazing. And it was really cool to see the Trevor Slattery character again. I mean, listen, let's just quickly go through kind of his history. In Iron Man 3, he was introduced as the fake Mandarin. I can remember the controversy around this. When the trailers came out, he looked badass. You'll never see me coming. He looked amazing. But then, when it was revealed that he was all fake, some comic book purists got very upset. But I'd say this. It was a good reminder that sometimes you should hold your fire and give a story time to develop, time to evolve. Because I'd say Marvel has really gotten great use out of the Trevor character, and had he been a villain, we all know, with the exception of Thanos, which I guess there are two Thanoses technically, but anyway, I'm trying to say that if he was a villain, he would have more than likely been a one and done. Or one in alternate universe one and done. Whereas now, you don't know when Ben Kingsley might show up. And the more Ben Kingsley we get in the MCU, the better. In the All Hail the King shorts, he was revealed as a washed-up actor. And in Shang-Chi, he returns as comic relief and emotional support. And in Wonder Man, his character is really more than a supporting character. He's more like a co-lead, actually. And I loved the show. Loved the show. I mean, first off, Black hero. And it's interesting to me in the show that he's playing Wonder Man, the character. It's like multiple layers of meta. He's an actor playing an actor who is playing a movie character who, in the comics, that character is actually that character. I don't know if that made sense, but that's what's happening here. Like I said, multiple layers of meta. It's kind of like a Rick and Morty episode. It is just, it is very interesting to see. And also another interesting characteristic of this is that he's playing a black actor who is replacing a white actor. And they never talked about that. They never showed the trolls in the internet getting all mad, like, we're being erased. I mean, they never showed any of that. And that's not to say, honestly, listen, I will say straight up, I don't actually like it when that happens. If I'm being real about that, because I'm always like, give us black characters, right? There are black characters that you can give us more of. I mean, Black Panther was an incredible movie. They didn't have to change anybody, right? Give us black characters. We can have things to be proud of. We don't have to take somebody's scraps or somebody's handouts, right? Like, we can be proud of the things that are ours. And there have been incredible black characters, and you can create more characters. So that's why I'm always like, you don't have to, I mean, maybe representation matters. I mean, of course it matters to some people. People have talked about it enough. I never felt limited growing up. Superman's my favorite character, and I never felt like I couldn't relate to him because he wasn't black. He was an alien. He's Kryptonian. Honestly, I loved Batman and never felt like I couldn't relate to him because he was white. Maybe that's just the way I grew up. It is the way I grew up. So, whatever. But I do like to see black characters. I do. And give me black characters that are black characters. But Wonder Man has been portrayed as a black character. And I think in this, he was great. And showing him taking over for a white character, I thought, was a very kind of interesting way to spice it up a little bit without actually addressing that or talking about that. The performances are spectacular. It's very interesting damage control. So I don't know if you guys know or not, but there's been lots of talk. They were going to do a damage control movie. They were going to do a damage control TV series. Never came to fruition. Honestly, I can see it. It's probably very difficult to have a damage control series or TV show. It reminds me of, I think DC had something like that. Like, they came out with a show on NBC that was supposed to be kind of like damage control. Like, I forget what it was called, but they like cleaned up after superheroes, I think. Only lasted one season. The show was funny, but of course it only lasted one season. I'm a nerd. Of course I watched every episode. Of course it didn't have larger appeal. Wonder Man just really, it has a lot of heart. Very funny. It's also a very interesting ground level look at the Marvel Universe. I loved that the actors had to prove they didn't have superpowers because in Hollywood, people had gotten hurt because of someone that had superpowers. And that story is hilarious. The whole background of the Doorman, who is also a Marvel comic book character, the background of what happened through there. I saw some people saying that it was Cloak and Dagger reference, but it's not. He's a character. But yeah, no, I thought that just the way it's written, it's very cool. The episodes are short, 30-minute episodes. There are only 8 of them. It's a very easy story to get through. They took the time they had to. They didn't rush, but at the same time, it's not a bunch of empty space. I just really enjoyed it, and I really want to see more of this character. And that last scene, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Just badass. When he finally figures out how to use his powers, just, badass. Anyway, loved the show, would recommend it. Please watch it if you haven't already. Okay, now it is time for what I'm calling, now last time you might remember we had Movie Showdown, and it was the first time did it. It was fun to do, but in creating this episode, I kept trying to think of movies, and everything that popped into my head that I wanted to do a showdown for wasn't a movie. And I was like, hey, you know what? This podcast is still young. And as we grow, I grow, and we learn together. So we can evolve and change our segments around after only doing a segment once. So now, what used to be Movie Showdown is now officially becoming Character Showdown, a space where we can talk about characters across genres, anime, comics, sci-fi, fantasy, and everything in between. So this Character Showdown is going to be between Jin Sakai, Ghost of Tsushima, and Atsu in Ghost of Yotei. First, Jin Sakai, Ghost of Tsushima. Set during the Mongol invasion of 1274, Ghost of Tsushima follows Jin Sakai, a samurai forced to abandon tradition to save his home. The game explores honor versus survival, the cost of war, the evolution of a warrior, and the birth of a legend. Jin's journey blends stealth, swordplay, and emotional storytelling. Next, Atsu of Ghosts of Yotei. Ghosts of Yotei is a mythic samurai adventure set around Mount Yotei. Atsu is a wandering swordsman drawn into a supernatural corruption spreading across the land. The game explores folklore, spiritual corruption, personal redemption, and the weight of solitude. Atsu's journey is intimate and mythical, a battle against both external forces and inner demons. Two warriors, two visions of honor, two journeys shaped by loss, duty, and identity. Now, personally, I love both of these games. I will admit that Ghost of Tsushima is my favorite of the two. I think it has a stronger opening and a more interesting story, but it's only my favorite by like a super small amount, honestly, because Ghost of Yotei is amazing. In fact, while Ghost of Yotei has a slow start, I'd say the third act of the game and of the story is even better than the amazing third act of Ghost of Tsushima. Both games are founded on character-driven storytelling, and both characters are well fleshed out. You feel their pain and their joy. It's an amazing experience. Now, I know that they might have taken liberties with Japanese history in both games, but in as much as a game can, you feel the two different eras. You not only see beautiful interpretations of feudal Japan and meet various characters that represent different parts of those societies, you feel fully immersed. The side quests are especially important to those feelings. I also appreciate how the game has a main story that's important, but it has intertwining parts of the main story, and you get to choose which order you go through those. Kind of like writing your own story. And it adds an extra layer of enjoyment when you replay the games because the experience won't be the same. These are two of my favorite games of all time. And these are two of my favorite characters in any storytelling medium. Now it's time for Heartland Heroes. And here are a couple of heroes who I've been following for a long time. And you might not even know they're Midwesterners. But Anthony and Joe Russo grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. Two Midwestern kids who fell in love with filmmaking. That's right. Cleveland, Ohio. They broke out with their indie film pieces, won at Slamdance, and were mentored by Steven Soderbergh. They went on to direct episodes of Community. Okay, can we talk about Dan Harmon, who created Community real quick, and Rick and Morty? In my opinion, the best comedic mind of our generation. But the Russos also directed series episodes in Arrested Development and Happy Endings, sharpening their comedic timing and ensemble storytelling. Then came the MCU. Captain America the Winter Soldier, Captain America Civil War, Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame. It is easy to say they delivered some of the biggest films in history while keeping their grounded, character-first sensibility. They are proof that Midwestern creators can shape global culture. And honestly, I would honestly say it is the Midwestern parts of them that make their movies so grounded. I mean, you're talking about fanciful people in ridiculous situations, wearing ridiculous, unrealistic outfits, and yet when Steve Rogers, when you see that hammer float in the air and fly past Thor into Steve Rogers' hand, come on, tell me you didn't get hype. And when you see him tighten that strap on his shield, his broken shield, and then you hear Sam in his ear, Captain Rogers, on your left, the callback to how they met, and then slowly characters that we had seen for over a decade in movies that we had gotten to know start coming out of those circles. You know you cried. You know you cried. Stop lying. You know you cried. I cried. I'll admit it. I cried. Whew. I'll tell you what. Wow. And a couple of Midwest boys did that to you. I couldn't be prouder. Okay. That wraps episode 3 of the Midwest Blerd Podcast. Thank you again for hanging out with me, celebrating fandom, and keeping the Midwest nerd spirit alive. If you want to share your thoughts, comments, theories, I'd be happy to read them and talk about them on the show. If we get enough, maybe we'll even create a new segment just for you. Maybe I'll name it after you. I can be reached by email at midwestblerd@gmail.com, on YouTube at the Midwest Blerd, and on X and Instagram at Midwest Blerd. If you enjoyed the show, share it with a friend, leave a review, and keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay hopeful, stay curious, and please stay blerdy.